Sure.
Okay. Good afternoon, participants. This is Vijayta here, and I welcome you all to this one-on-one session with Mr. Prashant Paliwal. He's the director of Yodlee, and he is going to give a brief about how you can integrate your API with the Yodlee's API. So over to you, Prashant.
Sure. All right. Just a sec. Yeah, I'll just get started here. Okay, so I'm just gonna share my screen here. Okay, so I have a brief presentation that I would like to first start with, with an introduction, and then, as and when required, I also would have a tech person from Yodlee, who should be on the call as well. So, if there are any tech questions, we can take those then, and or, I will also share some details later where you guys can email me, and I will direct you with the right questions. Okay. Okay, so I'm assuming you guys can all see my screen here.
Yes, Prashant, we can see your screen.
Okay, great. Okay. Yeah, so hi everyone. A very brief introduction from my side. So I look after our fintech business and ecosystem initiatives for Asia Pacific with a lot of focus on India and emerging markets. I'm here because we do partner with lots of incubators and accelerators. Where this is where fintech companies and developers like you are always there, because I would like to mention later in the presentation, because we are front and center, really transforming and helping fintech innovation around our platform. Today, we are excited to partner with DCB Bank here, for their flagship accelerator as well. And I'm here to sort of take you through a very quick introduction. I would like to spend most of my time today on the use cases which you guys can potentially enable using our APIs. Okay, so let me start here. And as and when needed, please, ask any relevant questions, and I will pause to answer your questions as well. So Yodlee is essentially,
Hello, one
yeah,
second, Prashant. I request participant to type in their questions so that if they unmute, so there might be kind of disturbance. So I request all the participants to type in their questions, and I will read out those questions for you so that you can answer them. Hello.
yes,
Yeah.
sounds good, Vijay. Yeah.
Oh, okay, Prashant. Please
Okay.
go ahead.
Okay. So this is a very quick overview about our company. We started in '99. We are headquartered in Bay Area, US, and primarily, we've been solving and serving for the large financial institutions. This is where you would see until 2010, we've been running our personal finance management solutions business. This is where we would basically provide white label personal finance management apps and solutions to large banks and financial institutions across the world. But what I'm going to focus today is the business and APIs which we opened up in 2012. And this is what we call Yodlee Interactive. So essentially, it's a capability which we provide to developers and fintech companies across the world to connect to our APIs, and hence connect to the banks and financial institutions across the world, and use those capabilities to provide value-added fintech solutions and apps and services to their customers across the world. So that was the birth of our platform, which we basically call Yodlee Interactive. This is when we opened up our financial platform in 2012. And this is exactly the vertical and business that I look after for this market. So moving along in 2014, we since we also have this wealth of data that we continue to aggregate. So 014 onwards, we also started, some analytical solutions on top of it, which is basically our data analytics business. But again, as I said, we'll focus more on the API business and APIs today. Okay. So at the core, what do our APIs really do? Our APIs essentially connect with leading financial institutions across the world, right? And later, I will also tell you what is our support and capabilities for India market. But essentially, whether it is your bank account, whether it is your credit card accounts, whether it is your retirement accounts, even, investments, um, uh, whether it is, your share, investment accounts where you have your securities and stocks, we basically provide a way to aggregate all that data and bring it all in one place, right? We know that financial data is typically fragmented. So Yodlee APIs allows you to bring it all in one place and develop solutions on top of it, and serve it to your end customers. So from a platform perspective, we are a massively scaled cloud infrastructure company. Every country that we go to, we typically have our own dedicated data centers. And later I will show you, how are we really aggregating this data? Primarily the aggregation API, as well as, there's another API which I will spend some time on, and the verification API. All these APIs help you aggregate your customers' data based on their consent. And then this consent is actually provided based on their credentials. So primarily it is credential-based aggregation. At the core is infrastructure, right? So for example, every country we go to support this so that your users, based on their credentials, which is username and password, to a particular financial institution, um, for them to enable to aggregate this data, we have to have this system and infrastructure of agents and robots, as well APIs that we directly connect to these financial institutions. And once we do that, we expose that and this capability via very simple to use APIs. And then on the top of it is all essentially, solutions. Yes, there are retail, banking, and wealth management solutions, but today we are, again, as I said, we're going to focus on APIs. We also take care of security pieces. So every country that we operate in, we are regulated by most authorities to essentially provide bank grade security. So every country we operate in, since we are dealing with sensitive financial data here, we basically go through regular security audits, just like a bank would go through, right? So our data centers, we essentially follow all industry security guidelines and solutions, and we go through all those relevant security audits on a regular basis. Okay, so on this slide, essentially, it just sort of talks about the capability again. On the right-hand side are all the financial institutions with whom we work with, and on the left-hand side are the internet innovators and technology companies, developers, and fintechs like you with whom we work with. And we are really at the center of all this, right? So we connect this ecosystem on both sides. So for example, there have been cases where when we have been out there, at some accelerators and incubators where there was a technology where we actually made some introductions with our bank customers as well. So it's a pretty interesting and thriving ecosystem of internet innovators as well as the financial institutions on the other side. So close to 1,000 organizations. We are a B2B company, and close to 1,000 organizations and banks across the world use our service today. Almost half of this is fintech companies like you, and the rest is large financial institutions. Um, we connect to 15,000 plus data sources across the world. We are at the core a technology company with close to 75 patents. And for India market, because I think this question will come out later, for India market, we are aggregating close to around 300 plus sites, banks and financial institutions. By that, what I mean is all the major banks, as well as other institutions, like credit card sites, it could be loan sites, or it could also be stocks and security sites, like, for example, sharekhan.com or Eaglewise Securities and so on. We also, for India market, aggregate a few telco bill sites like Airtel, Reliance Com, etc., as well as some reward sites like Jet Privilege, etc. So moving on, here is a snapshot of some of our customers for US market. And this is where, and very soon, I will actually show you a very similar picture for India and APAC market. But on the right-hand side is our institutional customers, some of our notable institutional customers. But on the left-hand side is our fintech customers. And most of these fintech customers in yellow are essentially using our APIs, our data aggregation APIs, or our account verification APIs. And later I will cover, some of these use cases in detail. But let's start with credit and risk. Now, let's try to understand that for a use case like credit and risk, how can developers and fintechs on the call today, how can you leverage our data aggregation APIs to essentially develop a solution that could interest you and your customers? So let me take an example of a large player called Cabbage. Cabbage is a notable business loan company in US. Essentially, they are in the business of providing working capital loans to largely e-commerce SMBs. And the way they do this is that during the loan application process, and as you would know, right, in India also, there are notable companies today. For example, there's a company called Fairsant, who has been one of our first customers, as well as a few other players like Home Credit, who are using our API for India market. But a typical use case there is that most of these digital journeys, when customers or SMBs, when they go online to apply for a loan, most of these digital journeys are being automated these days. The first phase is really KYC, right? A customer comes in, a customer or an SMB applying for a loan comes in. The first step really is, authenticating themselves, providing some KYC. In India, for example, a lot of this is today taken care of by Aadhaar and a few other APIs. But the second phase of loan approval is essentially understanding the overall financial situation of that customer. And this might involve, these customers sharing their financial data. This could be their bank statements, this could be their business cash flow statements, or this could be their any potential credit cards or liability statements. Now, the traditional way to do this would be, of course, they would upload some of these statements, or they would take pictures or email it to you, or you would send a loan guy to go pick up those documents. Fast forward, using Yodlee technology today, you could essentially automate most of these processes. So, for example, if someone is basically going to a lending platform and applying for a loan, after some basic KYC, there would be a Yodlee API integration through which these customers can search for their financial institution. So as an example, HDFC, they could type HDFC or ICICI. This is where they bank. They could basically type a Citibank credit card. This is where they have a credit card. And there will be a flow which will be powered by Yodlee, where through this API linkage, these customers would basically enter their credentials, their username and password. And as soon as they do this, Yodlee agents and API connectivity to that relevant uh, financial institution, after verifying those credentials, Yodlee technology will bring in all that data, by default around 90 days of data, and in most cases for India, around 6 months to 12 months of data as well, depending upon the actual institution. So we bring in all that data and provide you that data via API, and you can use that transactional data and analyze that data to really understand the debits and credits, the salary deposits, or the expenses of a particular business, and you can basically make sense of that data to actually understand the overall cash flow and make a credit decision in minutes, rather than waiting for days to sort of turn around and approve or disapprove that loan. So that's a very basic and simple use case, but you could build on top of this use case for to do variety of things, right? So I just covered lending. Accounting, as an example, is a large use case, and we do have a notable accounting companies like Zero, XERO. We do have few pilots happening in India as well as Asia, where same bank transaction data in real time could be used to reconcile your accounts, and speed up your overall reconciliation process. And finally, wealth management is another very interesting use case where the same bank transaction data can be used for very efficient onboarding of your wealth customers, where as they come in, they could basically provide credentials to their various bank accounts or liability accounts, and you could use that same information to essentially assess that their current status, and then you could continue to aggregate and automate these flows where they don't have to manually share this information, and automated data aggregation via Yodlee bank transaction data can be used by you to essentially provide those analytics on top, to even sell them relevant financial products. So these are some notable, I would say, credit, lending, as well as wealth management use cases. The final use case which I would like to touch upon, which PayPal across the world does with us, is instant account verification. So there are two APIs that we are looking at today. One is data aggregation, and the other one is instant account verification. So data aggregation is at the core, really allowing you to bring all the bank transaction data. And instant account verification API works quite in the same ways, but what it does is that, for example, PayPal, for example, if I have to transfer money to anyone sitting, someone sitting anywhere in the world, the first step is to actually add their bank account, add my bank account. Now, the traditional way of verifying a bank account has been challenge deposits. This is where banks typically deposit, few cents, a random number, and then later you allow that user to come in and verify that actual number that was deposited. Now, fast forward, using Yodlee API, instant account verification API, let's say even for a remittance type of use case, All you have to do is enter your username, password to that particular bank, and Yodlee technology takes care of the rest. So Yodlee goes to that particular bank account, gets the first name, last name, and the account number and IFSC code on that particular account and brings it back. And all you have to do is verify that particular information and match it to that provided by the end customer. So that's a very simple example of a use case. Whether it is remittance, whether it is even some of the KYC use cases, you could basically instantly verify a bank account of a person using our instant account verification API. So these were some of the use cases which I wanted to cover while I'm on a customer slide. And same use cases are being powered for various fintech players in Asia as well. Whether it is lending, whether it is same API for personal finance management, or whether it is remittance, or whether it is just financial research. And here are some of our customers and some of the companies using our APIs in India, just so that you can get a feel of it, that use cases are quite similar, whether you are an international player or a player in India. Use cases are quite similar, but you could basically use our API to power some of these use cases. At the same time, they could be a unique use cases that some of you guys on the call might be thinking about, right? Bank data at the core of it, right? You could basically come up with various creative ways to use our API, essentially. These are some of our partners. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, but I would like to jump on to the type of data that our aggregation API provides you. And I will also show you the website, that in a little bit, where you need to go through, where you can actually go ahead and set up developer accounts and then get started with our API. But at the core of it, for various types, at a very high level, which we call containers, in the Yodlee terminology, there is a bank container, there's a credit card container, and so on. And when you play with our APIs online in a sandbox, you will get to know this better in detail. But for various containers, we basically support various data types and allow you to bring in those data types, in JSON format and make sense of that data, right? So, for example, for a bank transaction, it would look like, date when that transaction happened, the amount of that date. We also categorize that transaction at a very high level for you, whether it is a fuel expense or whether it is, a retail expense and so on, right? And at the same time, for a loan account, as an example, we would like to get the outstanding balance as well as the rate on that particular loan. And same for insurance and rewards and so on, right? So it just sort of tells you at a very high level, this gets quite detailed when you will actually go through the actual API. But this is, really at a high level, what are the various type of containers that we support, and what could be the data types that you get in. Now, to expedite your development, since this could be quite tricky, right? Your end user, let's say you come up with an application which you expose it to your end user. Now, for your end user to come in on your application, search for a bank account, search for a bank, enter credentials, this could be a lot of headache for you to take care of security pieces and whatnot, right? Because at the end of the day, your users are entering credentials, right? So to simplify that, and to expedite the development of all this, what we have come up with is what we call fast link. And fast link is nothing but, it's an ad account wizard which allows your customers to start this process through a very quick integration. So I will show you the links where you can basically explore FastLink, but essentially, it's nothing but it's a web and mobile widget that you could integrate in your applications to speed up your development. And what it does is it allows your end users to search for a financial institution. For example, in this picture here, your end customer will see this once you have integrated with our API via FastLink. You can locate a site. You could type Chase, which is a US bank here, or you could type ICICI or HDFC. And your users will see the screen where they have to then enter the credentials. Now, all this is happening. It's a hosted solution. It's a hosted widget powered via our APIs, and all this is happening securely on our platform. So you don't have to worry about security at this point. And once your customers essentially enter their username credentials, Yodlee APIs will take care of the rest. We will go to the destination site, we will log in, we will verify. If we have an API connectivity, we will connect via API to that particular bank. But at the end of it, this particular account will be added by your user. And once that account is added, you will be able to see all that details. If you're using the FastLink widget, you could basically see the actual transactions that are coming in, and/or you can always tap into the relevant JSON data that is coming back as well. So as I said, I would encourage you to go to developer.yodlee.com and register a developer account. Typically, most of these developer accounts are valid for 45 days. But with our partnership with DCB Bank here, we will make sure that as and when you develop your solutions, not only that, we will extend the trial of the APIs of your developer accounts online. We will also give you, ability to go live, free APIs and credits for you to go live for free for around 6 months in India market. So, so that's really the value, right? You don't have to spend a single penny to integrate and go live with up to 1,000 customers in India market to test your solutions. So this is what it is. You can note down the URL, developer.yodlee.com, and everything is available there. It's your one-stop portal, including examples, whether it is PHP, Java, Python, whatever language you want to develop your solution in. All the details in terms of how to really get started with our API as well. Everything is available there. I would like to maybe very quickly show you our developer portal here, and then later, if you have any technical questions, the tech person from my team could take you through that as well. Okay, so I'm here. I'm sharing my browser here, and once you go to developer.yodlee.com, you could basically browse our API, right? So as you can see, you could basically try our account aggregation API and account verification API, right? And all the detail is here, in terms of how do you use this. Once you click on it, all the documentation, everything has been explained here in terms of how do you get started. But really, The first thing is you have to register for an account, which is, you can start here. You will basically create a new account, essentially a new developer account, and just set that up, and the rest is basically just taken care of. It's basically a REST API, and we also have Swagger, which is a tool to sort of help you play around with the API once you are in, and you can basically start your integration. As part of the developer account, you will basically get 5 developer accounts, 5 actual accounts through which you can test real bank integration. So for example, you will get 5 users. Every developer account gets 5 users underneath. These are basically set users, which you could use to connect to any bank or financial institution in India, as an example, right? So it could be HDFC or ICICI or whatnot. So that's how really, our API works. And the interesting use cases that I've taken you guys through, everything is available online for you to get started on. And I will, as and when required, you could send questions. I will share that email ID and all that in a later email with Vijeta as well. But let me pause here. I have gone through a lot of detail here. Let me pause here and hear out any questions that you might have. If there are any tech questions, I will have the tech person from my team answer those. But let me pause here and open up for questions.
Okay, Prashant. Mr. Sundareshan is asking, being a new company, we do not have many users, but would want to access historical data in order to test our artificial intelligence models. Is it possible for us to do that through Yodlee?
So as far as India market is concerned, as of now, what we are really providing you is the aggregation API and the verification API, which works purely based on end users' consent. So, we do not have data sets available for you for India market to develop data analytical solutions on top. You could basically, but at the same time, if you do have a user base of users who are coming in and entering credentials, then you could do that on top of it. But we do not have data sets that we can share with you. It is all your users based on their consent, and then your data that you can play with.
Okay. I request the other participants just to mute your mic. So if you have any questions, you can just ask. The forum is open for question and answer. So, and Mr. Sundaresh, Mr. Hello. So just to maintain the the flow, I have muted all of you. So give me a second. I'm going to unmute Mr. Prashant. Prashant, can you hear me? Hello. Hello. Yeah. Mr. Prashant, Mr. Sundareshan, is continuously asking. So I understand
Sure.
one needs to add users through the Yodlee API, which can be then be integrated with the software solution. So he wants your
Yeah,
help in this regard.
sure.
What you are selling to the dealer, future dealer, what you have to say?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Vijeta. He's not audible. I'm not able to make out what he's saying or
Uh,
asking.
oh, okay. So 1 second. Okay. So it says, My understanding, one needs to, what Sundareshan has to say is, one needs to add users through the Yodlee API, which can then be integrated with the software solution. So is that possible?
So I'll just,
You watch it every minute.
I'll just take you through just a sec.
If you are not getting the concept, watch it again and again till you get the concept. One individual.
It is
Okay.
possible, but once you register, first you have to register here.
Okay.
First you have to register here at developer.yodlee.com,
Okay.
and then you will see all the instructions. It's basically going to be an API.
Okay. Any other questions you people have? Okay, so I'm going to type in the email ID of Mr. Prashant Paliwal. So if you have any questions, Prashant, I think I can give your email ID and hello. So if any participants have any questions regarding the API integration of Yodlee API, you can write to them on this email ID. I hope this email ID is visible to everyone, right? And I'm also going to share email ID of Mr. Ajit Anil Terdalkar. So you can write to him as well, and we all will try to get back to you as soon as possible on your queries.
Okay, Vijeta.
Yeah.
Sorry, I have altogether a different question other than this API topic. There were like 3 ideas submitted from my account in the Innovation Carnival. I
Okay.
am kind of having bit unclarity which idea has been nominated and selected. Although we have gone ahead and confirmed our participation for the hackathon.
Okay,
Wanted
Sharad, I think this webinar is purely for integration of APIs and all. If you have,
Okay.
any questions other than that, you please write an email to me. I'll forward it to the concerned team and I'll try to get it answered.
Okay, all right,
Okay.
Vijeta.
Okay. So, any other questions?
So Vijeta,
yeah.
So Vijeta, as I said, the first step for all the participants is to register at this URL, which I'm showing, developer.yodlee.com, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And go through the documentation.
Yeah.
And if they have any questions, they can basically send us email, and then I will have our tech team help them out with any relevant queries.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Yes, definitely. So I think we are reaching out to the end of the sessions. Apart from that, Prashant, do you have anything else to say here?
No, that's all. No, I'll really look forward to fintech companies and developers with this DCB Bank partnership, really use our APIs and come up with wonderful solutions. Looking forward to that.
Yes, so and I wish all the very best to all the participants who have reached till here, and please feel free to reach out to us in case if you have any doubts or any concerns regarding the integration of Yodlee API, and we'll be there to assist you. Okay, so with that note, I would like to end this session and wish you all the very best and have a nice day. Bye.
Thank you everyone. Yeah, bye bye.
Bye-bye.